Economic populism: why Trump's promises are a shot in the foot for the middle class. If you're part of the middle class in America and still believe that Donald Trump's economic promises are made for your benefit, it's time to pause and take a hard look at reality. Behind the loud slogans and made-for-TV catchphrases lies a strategy that is not just flawed, it's dangerously self-destructive for the very people it claims to protect. Economic populism, when weaponized for political theater instead of sound policy, becomes a trap. And Donald Trump has become its loudest salesman. Before we dig into the facts, here's what I ask of you. If you value transparency, critical thinking, and the future of your paycheck and your family, then subscribe to this channel, drop a comment with your opinion, and join the discussion. Because the middle class is not just a voting bloc. It's the backbone of America, and it's being sold out. Let's call it what it is: economic populism wrapped in nationalism and turbocharged with misinformation. Trump's playbook includes flashy promises like bringing jobs back, cutting taxes, and protecting the American worker. But beneath that packaging are policies that mostly serve the ultra-wealthy, undermine trust in key institutions, and destabilize the economic future of the average American. One of the core strategies Trump pushes is massive tax cuts, presented as relief for all but disproportionately benefiting the richest tier of the population. His 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is a prime example. While the legislation temporarily lowered taxes for the middle class, the lion's share of the benefits went to corporations and the wealthiest individuals. Over time, many of those middle-class benefits are set to expire, while corporate cuts remain permanent. The result? Ballooning deficits, rising interest rates, and fewer public resources available for education, healthcare, and infrastructure, services the middle class actually relies on. Meanwhile, subsidies and economic handouts have been another tool of his populist arsenal, often presented as aid to forgotten Americans. But let's be honest, they're often poorly planned and politically motivated. Take, for example, Trump's aggressive trade war with China. When retaliatory tariffs hit American farmers hard, the administration pumped billions of dollars in emergency subsidies to rural communities to ease the pain. Sounds like support? In theory, yes. But these were band-aids on self-inflicted wounds. Many small farmers lost international markets they spent years building. Others faced skyrocketing costs for machinery and inputs, while the largest agribusinesses received the biggest checks. Once again, the middle-sized players, the actual heart of the rural economy, got squeezed out. And let's not forget inflation. The kind of economic instability that populist leaders stir up, through chaotic trade policies, inconsistent messaging, and attacks on central institutions like the Federal Reserve, feeds inflationary pressure. Trump's tendency to undermine the Fed's independence, for example, damaged global investor confidence and shook currency markets. Add to that the pandemic-era stimulus policies, paired with continued deregulation and fiscal mismanagement, and inflation soared. The cost of groceries, rent, gasoline, all of it surged, eating into the disposable income of the very voters Trump claims to champion. Another piece of this populist puzzle is the illusion of job protection. Trump has long painted himself as the savior of American industry, promising to revive coal and manufacturing. But data tells a colder truth. During his term, coal jobs continued to decline, automation continued to replace factory workers, and the few deals made to bring back jobs often involved massive government incentives to private companies that later failed to deliver long-term employment. What Trump offered was nostalgia dressed up as economic policy, and the middle class paid the price. Even more troubling is how Trump's rhetoric and policies have directly attacked the very institutions that ensure long-term economic stability. His repeated assaults on the credibility of the Federal Reserve, the Department of Labor, and the Congressional Budget Office weren't just political bluster. They were part of a deliberate strategy to erode public trust in facts, in oversight, and in the rule of law. Why does that matter economically? Because markets need stability. Workers need transparency. Businesses need reliable governance to plan and grow. Undermining these institutions in the name of populism makes it harder for anyone outside the billionaire class to navigate an already challenging economy. But perhaps the most devastating effect of Trump's economic populism is cultural. It pits Americans against each other. His policies, while favoring the wealthy, are packaged as blows against elites and globalists, creating the illusion that the enemy is someone across the city or state line, not the billionaire class pulling the strings. It's a sleight of hand that has fractured the working class, distracted from real culprits, and weakened our collective bargaining power. And while the top 1% continue to consolidate wealth, the rest of the country is left watching their wages stagnate, their housing costs skyrocket, and their job security dwindle. The promise of prosperity has turned into a mirage for many who believed in the message but were betrayed by the math. Let's be clear, this is not about being anti-Trump. This is about being pro-truth, pro-worker, and pro-middle class. If any political figure, left or right, sells you economic fantasies while undermining the structures that keep markets fair and people employed, they deserve scrutiny. And Trump's version of economic populism deserves more than that. It deserves to be called out for what it is, a Trojan horse for wealth consolidation disguised as patriotic rescue. The worst part? These policies don't just hurt people today. They set in motion long-term consequences. Rising national debt, growing wealth inequality, underfunded public services, and a generation of voters conditioned to distrust institutions that actually work in their favor. You might be wondering, so what's the alternative? Accountability, transparency, investment in real infrastructure, support for small businesses, not giant corporations, tax policies that actually redistribute instead of concentrate, and leadership that doesn't depend on chaos and scapegoating to distract from economic decline. The middle class doesn't need slogans. It needs results. And the more we allow populist promises to go unchallenged, the deeper the damage will be, not just economically, but democratically. So if this resonates with you, if you're tired of being lied to, used as a pawn, and watching your paycheck shrink while billionaires grow their portfolios, then it's time to speak up. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment with your story. Share this video with someone who still believes economic populism is a cure and not the disease. Because silence is exactly what allows these broken promises to continue. Economic populism sounds good in speeches, but in practice, it's a hollow weapon. And right now, it's pointed directly at the heart of the middle class.